Hold her down, Madison hissed, yanking my wrists behind my back as two of her friends grabbed my arms. You like to steal my things? Let me steal your dignity. I should have fought harder. I should have screamed. But instead I sat there, frozen, still, silent. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. The buzzing sound of the clippers echoed off the walls of our family's garage, mixing with the cruel laughter of everyone watching. Madison's boyfriend was recording it on his phone, grinning like he was filming a prank for social media. My heart wasn't pounding from fear, it was burning from betrayal. You stole my necklace, she yelled over the sound. It was Grandma's. I can't believe my own sister would do that. I looked to my dad, standing at the doorway with his arms crossed, face like stone. Not even a flicker of doubt in his eyes. Just shame. At me. I could have screamed the truth then. That she sold her own necklace a week ago to cover her impulsive shopping spree. That I'd quietly replaced it with a replica using my money just so our dad wouldn't know. That every month, I was the one paying Madison's college tuition while she partied and skipped classes. That the electric bill, groceries, her Uber charges, all quietly covered by my freelance checks. But instead, I just smiled. Not a smile of defeat, but a smile of knowing. Because humiliation can be washed off. Hair grows back. But truth? Truth doesn't stay buried forever. After the last strand fell to the floor, and their laughter faded, I stood up slowly. Madison shoved me, sneering. Now, maybe you'll learn your place. I dusted off my jeans, looked her dead in the eyes. I already know my place, I said calmly. And it's not here anymore. You're not going anywhere until you admit you took it, Dad barked, finally stepping in. You embarrassed this family for the last time. I didn't take anything, I said, voice steady. But you all just did. You took the last ounce of respect I had for you. Then get out, he roared. I don't want to see your face under this roof again. Gladly. I walked out that garage barefoot, bald, and betrayed. No suitcase. No phone. Just a quiet fire building inside me. They thought I was weak. They thought I'd come crawling back. But they had no idea what I was about to do. And by the time the world found out, they would be the ones begging for a seat at my table. I didn't cry that night. Not even when I walked 3 miles barefoot to the only person who never judged me, Mrs. Flynn, my old high school English teacher. She opened the door, took one look at me, and pulled me into the warmest, safest hug I'd felt in years. Oh, honey, she whispered. What did they do to you? They shaved my head and threw me out, I said softly. She didn't ask why, didn't press, just brought me in, fed me soup, gave me her guest room, and let me breathe. I slept for 14 hours straight. The next morning, I stared at myself in the mirror. The reflection was almost unrecognizable, my scalp red and raw in patches, my eyes swollen from the wind, not tears. But something was different. I didn't feel broken. I felt reborn. Mrs. Flynn placed her hand on my shoulder. Aubrey, I always knew you had fire in you. But now it's time to show them what happens when they burn down the wrong woman. She wasn't wrong. I spent the next 2 weeks building. Quietly. Focused. While Madison paraded around town flaunting her victory, I went to war, with spreadsheets, records, and emails. See, I hadn't just been paying their bills. I had every receipt, every bank statement, every tuition payment made from my freelance account, every loan co-signed with my credit. And then I made one call. To a local journalist. Rachel Garza. Young, sharp, obsessed with stories that exposed hypocrisy and family betrayal. I sent her everything. And when she asked why, I said, because I want the truth to have a louder voice than their lies. She agreed to publish, after one final piece. Can I interview you on camera? She asked. You tell your story in your words. Let people see what they did. I hesitated. I wasn't vain. I wasn't out for fame. But I remembered Madison's boyfriend smirking as he recorded my humiliation. I remembered my dad saying I embarrassed the family. So I said yes. 2 days later, I sat in Rachel's studio, bald head proud and chin held high. And I told everything. From how I raised Madison through her breakdowns, how I skipped college to work 3 jobs just to keep the lights on at home, how I never once asked for credit, how the moment I stopped being useful, they turned on me like wolves. And when she asked, "What would you say to them now?" I looked directly at the camera and said, "Thank you. Because when you pushed me out, you gave me the freedom to build without you. And I will." The video dropped at 8 p.m. on a Friday. By morning, it had 2.7 million views. And my phone, which I had finally replaced, was exploding. Not with hate, but with offers. Publishing houses, TV segments, brands asking to partner on Survivor campaigns, charities wanting to feature my story. And then the email. From a woman named Samantha Dyer, CEO of a multi-million-dollar female-led tech startup. Subject line: "You're exactly what we need." The email from Samantha Dyer wasn't long, but every word crackled with power. "Aubrey, I watched your interview. Twice. I don't usually reach out like this, but I've built my company on grit and truth. And you? You've got both in spades. We're expanding. Fast. I want you here. No pressure. Just possibility. Let me know." Samantha. I stared at the screen for a full minute, heart thudding, my fingers hovering over the keys. Not because I was unsure, but because the girl they shaved wasn't used to being wanted. Not for what she could do for others, but for who she was. I typed back, "I'm in." The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. Samantha flew me out to Seattle. First class. Her assistant met me at the airport with a sign that said, "Aubrey Collins, our hero." I laughed. Actually laughed. For the first time in weeks. Their HQ was glass and steel, perched on a hill with a view of the whole skyline. When I walked in, the receptionist stood up and said, "She's here," and suddenly, people were clapping. Samantha came down herself, tall and striking in a navy blazer, and pulled me into a hug like we were old friends. "I don't know what your title is yet," she said, eyes glowing, "but I know one thing. You belong in rooms where no one dares humiliate you again." I started as a community impact coordinator, but quickly rose. My story had drawn attention, yes, but what shocked people was my mind, my work, my ideas. I rebuilt their philanthropic wing, partnered with abused women's shelters, and set up a program where the company funded education for girls who had been kicked out of their homes, just like me. And while I rose, Madison spiraled. The video had shattered her image. Students at her college started whispering. She lost her internship when they found out she lied about her financial background. Her influencer sponsorships dried up overnight. Even her boyfriend bailed. I hadn't spoken to her since that night in the garage. But then one afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I picked up. "Aubrey," her voice was small, strained. "It's Madison." I didn't say anything. I wanted to say sorry," she stammered. "I was stupid and jealous and angry, and I don't know what I was doing. Everyone hates me now. Dad won't even talk to me after your video. He said I made the family a joke." I let the silence stretch long enough for her to squirm. Then I asked quietly, "Why did you do it?" She hesitated. "Because you were everything I wasn't. You handled life. And I thought if I ruined that for you, maybe I'd feel better about me." A pause. A painful one. "I don't want anything," she added. "I just wanted to hear your voice. I miss my sister." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't lash out. I just said, "I wish you had said that before you shaved my head." And hung up. That night, I didn't feel victory. I felt closure. I wasn't the girl in the garage anymore. I was a woman who had stood in fire and walked out gold. But the story wasn't over. Because the real twist? My father was next. And what he did when he found out who had been paying the mortgage on his house would shake the entire family tree. 3 months passed. 3 months of rebuilding my life brick by golden brick. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. My bald head grew soft new hair, but I left it cropped short, a reminder of where I came from. My wardrobe went from hand-me-downs to tailored jackets and sleek heels. I wasn't trying to impress anyone, But the girl who once walked barefoot and broken deserved to look like the woman she had become. Then one Monday morning, an email came in that made me sit up straight. Urgent. Property deed discrepancy. Collins residence. It was from a mortgage service I hadn't thought about in a while. Because, see, long before that humiliating night back when I was still living at home and working 3 jobs, my dad had defaulted on the mortgage, twice. He never told anyone. But I had found the foreclosure notice under a pile of junk mail. So, I paid the mortgage. Quietly. Anonymously. Every single month. I couldn't let my little sister be evicted, even if she didn't know what groceries cost. But now, the service was informing me that my auto payments had triggered a clause. One I hadn't realized existed. Apparently, when I assumed financial responsibility for over 75% of the payments, the deed legally transferred to me. That's right. The house wasn't his anymore. It was mine. And the deadline to challenge it had long passed. I stared at the screen in stunned silence, heart thudding. I hadn't planned for this. Hadn't dreamed of revenge this way. But fate had its own sense of justice. I didn't call him. I sent a letter, neatly typed, delivered by certified courier. It read, Dear Richard Collins, this is to notify you that effective immediately, your residence at 704 Hemlock Avenue is under the legal ownership of Aubrey Collins by default of the payment clause in the mortgage agreement. You have 30 days to vacate the premises or submit a rental agreement to remain. Warm regards, A. Collins. The phone call came that same evening. He didn't even wait for me to say hello. What the hell is this? He bellowed. I didn't flinch. It's a legal notice, Dad. You paid the mortgage? Since when? Since you were 2 months away from foreclosure and too proud to tell your own daughters. You can't do this to me. I took a long, deep breath. You already did it to yourself, Dad. I just stopped carrying your consequences for free. He went quiet, breathing hard. I pictured him in that worn recliner, red-faced, still wearing the same judgment he wore the night he tossed me out. And then something cracked. I didn't know, he muttered. I didn't know it was you. I thought you were just living off us. I thought, Madison. You thought wrong. I cut in coldly. And you never once asked. Silence. I was your daughter too. I added, voice trembling but clear. But you threw me out like garbage because of a lie. Now you can live with the truth. He didn't speak again. He just hung up. And I felt nothing. No glee. No victory dance. Just stillness. The next week, my attorney confirmed that they packed up and moved out quietly. No lawsuit. No drama. Just a quiet departure from a house they never really appreciated until it was gone. I sold the house 2 weeks later. Donated half the profits to domestic abuse shelters. Used the rest to open a small foundation in my name. The A. Collins Fund for Unseen Daughters. And when we held the opening gala, Rachel Garza, the journalist, asked me to give a speech. I walked up to the stage, lights warm on my face, eyes from all around the city staring at me. People who'd seen the video. People who whispered when I walked into rooms now, but with respect. I looked out over the sea of faces and said, You don't owe anyone your silence, especially not the ones who tried to break you with it. You are allowed to rise. Loudly, boldly, unapologetically. Applause thundered through the room. But I wasn't finished. Because in the back row sat a familiar figure. Hair tangled, hoodie drawn, eyes glassy. Madison. I froze when I saw her. Madison, slouched in the back, wearing the same faded hoodie I used to lend her on cold nights. She looked like a ghost of her old self. Not the glitter-drenched, selfie-taking Madison the world used to know, but a hollow version. The crowd's applause roared around me, but my world went still for a beat. I looked at her, really looked, and I remembered it all. The nights I stayed up helping her finish college assignments while she snuck out to parties. The hundreds of dollars I wired to her secretly when Dad refused to buy her textbooks. The time she had the flu and I skipped a week of work to take care of her. And then I remembered the cold blade of the clippers against my scalp. Her laughter as she shaved me in front of her friends. The betrayal. I finished my speech with grace, shook hands with the donors, posed for photos. But when the crowd began to thin out and the lights dimmed, I walked to the back and sat beside her. She didn't look up, just stared at the glass of untouched lemonade in her hands. "I didn't think you'd come," I said softly. "I almost didn't," she whispered. "Didn't think I deserved to." A long pause, the kind that forces two people to face the space between them. "I saw the foundation name," she added, her voice cracking. "Unseen Daughters. I guess I never really saw you either." I said nothing. "I thought you'd become someone cold after everything. That you'd ruin us, post some video just to shame me. But you didn't," she said, finally glancing at me. "You built something better. Bigger. You helped people instead." Tears shimmered in her eyes, but she blinked them away. "I didn't come here to ask you for anything," she said. "Not forgiveness. Not money. I just wanted to see you once standing tall. Because I think it's the first time I've ever actually seen who you are." I let her words sink in. Because they weren't perfect. They weren't polished. But they were honest. "I'm not the same girl you shaved," I said. "But part of me still wishes my sister had stood up for me that night, not laughed." "I know," she whispered. "And I hate that I can't change it." "I do too." We sat in silence for a moment. Two women who once shared bunk beds and late-night secrets, now divided by years of resentment and hard-earned scars. Finally, she stood. "Goodbye, Aubrey," she said. "Goodbye, Madison." She walked out of the gala and into the cool night air, swallowed by the city she once thought belonged to her. And I stood there unmoved, but not unfeeling. Because healing isn't always a moment. Sometimes it's a choice made quietly, again and again. In the months that followed, the A. Collins Fund grew bigger than I ever imagined. Scholarships were awarded to girls whose families had cast them aside. Emergency grants went to women fleeing abusive homes. We partnered with shelters, schools, even local clinics. I became the face of something powerful. Not because I wanted fame, but because I understood the silence no one else did. One day, Rachel Garza messaged me again. "There's a Netflix producer who saw your speech. Wants to talk." I didn't say no. And when the series came out, The Girl They Shaved, it opened with a scene of me walking barefoot down the street that night, head held high. I watched it in a private theater with Samantha and Mrs. Flynn on either side of me. When it ended, I leaned back and smiled. Because I knew somewhere out there, a girl who'd just been cast aside, humiliated, disowned, would see this story and realize she wasn't alone. And she'd rise too. Not in revenge, but in quiet, unstoppable power. Just like I did.